that dire outlook from the BOT. How do you expect that to impact your business, tourism in Thailand?
Well, there's no question that we're getting an impact already now, and we're seeing it not only from the tourism factor, but even from the domestic economy. The lockdown in the country has been severe. So with the exception of our delivery business, everything is affected. When you move to Phuket, where I am right now in the sandbox, that's opened up and already had about 100,000 tourists coming in and many more booked over the next couple of months.
It is, of course, a reflection of how challenging it is to reopen the borders. I mean, you operate in 55 countries, more than 500 hotels. I'm just wondering, is that impacting your liquidity? Because we know that you sold shares in 2 hotels in Portugal to boost liquidity, to pay debt.
Absolutely right. We also closed 2 asset rotations just 2 days ago in Portugal. We sold 2 properties, but we were successful in doing our new bond issue in Europe. We raised 400 million euros at the same rate that we had raised our last bond, and it doesn't mature for 4 years. We did a new perpetual bond in Thailand a week ago. It was 5 times oversubscribed, and we also raised some domestic bonds, and they were also oversubscribed. So from a liquidity position, we've never been stronger than we are right now. We'll continue with our asset rotation, and we'll continue to focus. But a bright spot is the fact that Europe is opening up now, while Asia remains locked down, and our properties in Indonesia, Malaysia, and Thailand. But the rest of the world is opening up rather quickly. Dubai in the Middle East has been very strong for us, the Maldives, all through Europe. And now even in the Americas, we see improvements.
So pretty uneven. Give us a sense of your occupancy rates. When do you expect to see pre-pandemic levels in areas like Europe where you see, great hope?
Well, I think if we take Europe, after 15 months, we expect July, we're going to have our first positive cash flow, and we'll be positive EBITDA in August. So we're seeing the rest of the world, which is determined to open up, coming. When we look at Singapore, Thailand, Malaysia, and the rest of Southeast Asia, they're really committed to trying to control their virus, and as a result, they're not trying to open up at all. And so I'm reasonably optimistic about the rest of the world and a bit depressed about Asia.
Bill, absolutely. It's been awful for the hospitality industry. Everybody suffered financially as well. Can you weather the storm overall?
Well, I think we're sitting with somewhere in excess of $1 billion in cash. So we're certainly well geared until, at least for another year. And we have no maturities of any of our loans until 2025.
Well, so Bill, that brings me nicely to, where you are at the moment. You're in Phuket. You're in the so-called sandbox there. How is that all working out? And, for some, it's been a place where people have been able to do deals face-to-face. Give us a sense of that as well.
Absolutely. The fact is that you can get in, as long as you're vaccinated and you have a PCR test, you can come from anywhere in the world, and there's no quarantine. You can have meetings with people from Bangkok who can come down, albeit right now there's no flights flying, so you have to come by private jet or drive. But nonetheless, we see tourists coming in. International flights are flying from Singapore, Dubai, Abu Dhabi, coming directly into Phuket as well as Bangkok. But if you go into Bangkok, you have to go into what they call an ASQ hotel and quarantine. If you come to Phuket, you can be out and about on the island because the whole island has been vaccinated immediately.
Yeah, and Bill, it gives a sense also here as well of how Asia is so far behind. I mean, how did, let's say, yields vary over and RevPAR, revenue per average room? How do they actually also pan out in the different jurisdictions across Asia?
Well, in places like Thailand basically is closed except for Phuket. In Phuket, we're achieving sort of 40% occupancies. In Bangkok, where we have some ASQ business, the hotels are running probably 25%. Europe now has come up to around 40%. So So generally, surprisingly, ADR rates are a bit higher than they were, and they're yielding higher rates, but the RevPAR is probably still a bit lower than they were pre-pandemic. But, markets like China, which have huge domestic markets, and Europe are doing extremely well. We're very pleased at the results that we're seeing coming out of Italy, Germany, Spain, and even the UK.
Bill, if you were to hazard a guess, when do you see American and European travelers being able to get to Asia? We heard from Tony Fernandez of AirAsia saying that, that Australia is like the hermit kingdom. I mean, everything remains pretty much shut.
Well, that's the problem, and I worry a lot because China basically hasn't allowed anyone in or out, and there's no talk of Chinese tourism coming anywhere. So the numbers that I'm quoting you and giving you for whether it's from Phuket or Europe is without any single Chinese tourist traveling in the world today. So, and the rumor is that there won't be anybody coming out of China until middle of next year. So that's going to have a huge impact. But nonetheless, the domestic markets in many of the other countries are very strong. So as far as the U.S. coming out, I think you can definitely, we have U.S. tourists here in Thailand now. We have many people coming to Thailand to do their sandbox and then can travel freely within Thailand after 14 days.
Is there risk that perhaps businesses could be pressurizing governments too much when it comes to reopening the borders? We have the case of Indonesia, where we're hearing that it was the businesses who forced, put pressure on the president to ease restrictions.
I think the biggest thing that we have to do is speed up vaccinations. This has nothing to do with businesses wanting to open up earlier. Vaccinations are the key to opening up any country. The faster the vaccinations, the faster you can open up. We need more vaccinations, not more lockdowns. We need more vaccinations, not more handouts, which many of the Asian governments are doing. So, frankly, it's all about vaccines. And if you do it safely, as I think Phuket is hopefully demonstrating, that you're testing everyone that's entering the country, everyone is vaccinated. So far, they've only had a handful of cases, all of which can be easily dealt with at the local hospital here in Phuket, which is not overwhelming, unlike Bangkok.
So, Bill, is there a template that governments could actually use to normalize it? I mean, there's so much debate, let's say, about a vaccine passport and the like.
Well, I'm traveling on a Thai vaccine passport now when I went to Europe and the US last week, and that worked very well everywhere I went. You've got to accept today that you're going to have a PCR test to get on any airplane and to go virtually anywhere. So to me, it's all about trying to speed up vaccinations, limiting places to people that are vaccinated. I think this is a key that we're seeing in many markets. Just closing down, as we're seeing in Singapore, where, the restaurants are now back to serving only 2 people at a time. I'd much rather see that they were using some sort of a QR code that showed that people were vaccinated. And if they're vaccinated, and if everybody in the restaurant is vaccinated, then let them in, open up. This is killing businesses, and economies are suffering much more greatly than perhaps even the disease. When you look at the death rate in places like the UK, yes, they're living with many cases. We're not going to get to 0 cases. This is an endemic, and we're going to have to learn to live with it as best we can. Keep social distancing, get your vaccination, wear a mask, be careful.